There is a type of man who doesn't compete, beg, or chase. He remains still while the world twists itself in desire, and that stillness unsettles those who are addicted to stimulation. True masculine power has never been in the body, the money, or the social prestige. It lies in the ability to avoid being ruled by one's own impulses. Most men live trapped by sexual appeal, reacting to any spark of female attention. They become predictable, fragile, and easy to manipulate because they confuse desire with necessity. Their minds don't think, they obey. And a man who obeys his own desire becomes quietly submissive. But when a man breaks that dependency, the entire board shifts. He stops being led and starts leading. The tension begins here. If you are not in control of your mind, someone else already is. The difference between the man who desires and the man who observes is the difference between a piece and a player. A desexualized mind isn't a virtue, it's an unfair advantage. Machiavelli would understand that perfectly. The ordinary man believes he's making choices, but he's only reacting. A woman's presence shifts his rhythm, his posture, and even his ability to think clearly. He reads this as natural attraction when it's actually conditioning. Every move he makes is shaped by desire. He looks too much, talks too much, gives in too easily. In this silent search for validation, he exposes exactly where he is weak. His fragility isn't physical, it's psychological. The dopamine he mistakes for free will destroys his discipline, focus, and stability. He tries to build something but gets distracted by trivial stimuli. He tries to maintain respect, but gives away power with a single needy glance. Mental energy that should be directed toward strategy is wasted on fantasies, expectations, and anxieties. The modern world captures him effortlessly, offering cheap pleasure to keep him docile. Society exploits him because it knows constant desire creates dependency. Social media, advertising, and even casual interactions work as bait. He lives almost in control, but never truly is. Desire pulls him, rewards him, and drains him, leaving him emotionally weak and socially exposed. He thinks he's achieving something when in truth he's being steered by predictable impulses. Machiavelli would understand this pattern. A man driven by pleasure is easy to manipulate because he can't see beyond the next stimulus. He becomes anxious for female approval and willing to bargain his own dignity for scraps of attention. This is why people say desire is debt, and every debtor eventually bows. The metaphor is clear. A man ruled by desire is a castle without doors. He tries to build walls of discipline, but any smile, any touch, any empty promise tears them down. Nothing in him is truly protected. Nothing is truly his. He believes he's a predator, but lives as prey, not because he is weak, but because he never realized his weakness is the flame others learn to use against him. The first leap doesn't happen with noise. It begins in silence. In the moment a man realizes his impulse isn't a command, but a programmed reflex. In that rare instant, he watches his own desire the way someone observes a restless animal trapped inside the mind. The mere awareness of this internal movement reveals something important. If an impulse can be observed, it can be controlled. And every form of control begins with distance. When a man stops reacting automatically to feminine stimulus, his mind slows down. Compulsion gives space to clarity, and clarity gives space to emotional coldness. He notices that for years he confused tension with attraction, anxiety with interest, and neediness with desire. Every automatic response he gave was noise, not choice. Desexualization begins exactly here, when desire stops dictating his gaze, his voice, and his posture. The silence of desire produces a clarity that unsettles. The man starts to see manipulations that once looked innocent, compliments that once felt spontaneous, and invitations that once seemed genuine. None of this actually changes. What changes is the lens. A desexualized mind doesn't judge, it registers. And in that cold registration, power begins to reorganize itself. He realizes his energy had been scattered by useless stimuli, and that what he called freedom was just reaction disguised as spontaneity. Emotional coldness emerges as a natural consequence. It isn't arrogance or indifference, it's internal order. He doesn't lose interest in pleasure, he simply refuses to be led by it. The world that once felt urgent now appears simple, predictable, even slow. This slowing is not peace, it is strategic advantage. A man who can observe his own desire becomes immune to the chaos that enslaves others. In the end, he understands the core truth. Desire had always been speaking too loudly. When the volume drops, he discovers something he never imagined he possessed: direction. A desexualized mind doesn't eliminate the impulse, it domesticates it. And a domesticated desire turns any ordinary man into someone capable of movements that were once impossible. When a man abandons neediness, something rare happens. He stops emitting the psychological scent of desperation. Most men reveal themselves before saying a word. Expectation in their eyes, urgency in their posture, desire in their silence. The desexualized man, however, moves without haste, asks for nothing, and seeks no approval. This absence of intention creates an unsettling presence for those who are used to manipulating through charm. He doesn't react to stimulus, he observes. And the one who observes is always a step above. In social dynamics, value does not come from availability, but from scarcity. The desexualized man becomes scarce without effort, not because he hides, but because he doesn't chase. He is an enigma by nature. The absence of need becomes authority, and authority becomes magnetism. While others try to prove their worth, he becomes valuable precisely because he doesn't try. His presence disrupts expectations. Women don't know how to guide him, adversaries don't know how to provoke him, and everyone tries to decode what drives him. Becoming inaccessible does not mean being distant. It means being impenetrable to others' attempts at control. The weak expose themselves at the slightest hint of attention, but he remains unchanged. It isn't theatrical coldness, it's internal sovereignty. He doesn't depend on validation, which makes it impossible for anyone to use validation against him. His energy doesn't leak, his focus doesn't crumble, and his posture doesn't shift according to the stimulus. This creates the impression that he knows something others don't, and that perception alone raises his rank in the invisible hierarchy. Machiavelli would say that power belongs to the one who holds what everyone else depends on. The desexualized man holds precisely that: autonomy. He does not need what others chase, and for that reason he becomes inevitable. Those who don't beg for attention end up receiving more than those who plead for it. His inaccessibility doesn't isolate him, it crowns him. He becomes the man who is never desperate, never overly available, and never easy to read. And that is why, in the end, everyone orbits around him, even though he orbits around no one. Manipulation never begins with force. It begins with an offer, a smile, a compliment, a vague promise. The ordinary man falls for it because he constantly seeks confirmation of his own worth. The man with a desexualized mind watches the scene with a coldness that dismantles any subtle attempt at control. He doesn't confuse charm with interest or theatrical vulnerability with sincerity. His attention isn't hijacked by the stimulus. It stays anchored in logic. And when logic leads, emotional games lose their power. Desire is always the doorway through which manipulation enters. A man who desires too much negotiates poorly. A man who desires too much believes quickly. A man who desires too much reacts before thinking. The desexualized man reduces this vulnerability because he doesn't feed expectations. He listens without getting involved, analyzes without attaching, responds without giving himself away. Tests that work on most men, induced jealousy, provocation, calculated silence, become useless. He sees the intention before the gesture and perceives the move before the words. Seduction stops being a threat and becomes mere information. This immunity doesn't come from distrust. It comes from clarity. He recognizes that human behavior always seeks advantage, affection, or dominance. By removing the addiction to pleasure, he removes the main emotional lever others use. No one can press his psychological buttons because they're no longer exposed. His neutrality is unsettling. There is no way to manipulate someone who doesn't react automatically, and that absence of reactivity places him above the social theater around him. When Machiavelli says that whoever controls the desires of others controls the world, he is describing precisely this state. The desexualized man not only protects himself, he gains strategic advantage. In negotiations, he stays unshaken. In relationships, he maintains firm boundaries. In power dynamics, he detects hidden intentions that others overlook. His mind functions like a mirror. It reflects, but it doesn't absorb. In the end, the idea proves exact. When desire doesn't control you, no one does. He becomes the most feared piece on the board, not because of force, but because he cannot be steered by impulses he has already mastered. When desire stops consuming the mind, the energy that once scattered into fantasies, impulses, and distractions reorganizes itself into direction. The desexualized man no longer wastes hours chasing stimuli or living dependent on brief mental rewards. His dopamine stabilizes, and with it, the world stops pushing him. He begins to see priorities with a sharpness the common man never experiences. Nothing pulls him, nothing rushes him, nothing seduces him. He decides, and everything else simply reacts. When sexual energy isn't drained, it becomes execution power. The man becomes more precise, more calculated, more resilient. Tasks that once felt exhausting turn trivial. Goals that once seemed distant become attainable. He doesn't oscillate between focus and escape. He remains. The absence of emotional urgency creates a form of discipline that looks like arrogance to those who don't understand its origin. He isn't avoiding pleasure. He's choosing where to place his strength, and that choice turns his productivity into a weapon. The world slows down because he stops being a slave to constant excitement. Easy rewards lose their shine, and long-term achievements gain meaning. He starts to prefer silence over noise, routine over chaos, construction over dispersion. This cold ambition isn't impatience, it's strategy. He stops pursuing immediate pleasure because he understands that every impulse indulged is a piece of energy lost. His focus becomes a rare resource, and therefore, a devastating one. The principle guiding this mindset is simple. A clean mind makes moves. A dirty mind reacts. The desexualized man reacts to nothing. He acts when he wants, how he wants, and for reasons he chooses. This logic places him above the emotional currents that destroy the common man's concentration. He doesn't need motivation. He only needs direction. And once he finds that direction, he becomes nearly unstoppable. In the end, cold ambition creates an invisible advantage. While others fight their own impulses, he fights only the objective he chose. The internal battlefield is already won. And once the internal battle is won, the external world stops being an obstacle and becomes territory to conquer. When a man removes his addiction to pleasure, he removes the main breach through which the world enters his mind. Most of a man's suffering comes from expectations, to be desired, to be chosen, to be validated. The ordinary man fears rejection because he is emotionally dependent on the response of others. But the desexualized man does not fear absence, silence, or loss. His stability does not come from external stimulation, but from an internal axis that does not move. And what does not move becomes impenetrable. This psychological untouchability does not mean insensitivity, it means immunity. What once unsettled him, shifts in interest, emotional games, calculated distance, becomes irrelevant. He understands that no one can knock him off balance because his balance is no longer built on desire. Provocations lose strength, manipulations lose effect, emotional bargaining loses value. He sees every attempt as a predictable move on a predictable board. And controlling the board is always easier than controlling one's own cravings. By no longer needing constant stimulation, he becomes complete on his own. This completeness is not arrogance, it is independence. He does not seek affirmation, so he does not fear its absence. He does not seek validation, so he is not wounded when it doesn't come. This lack of psychological vulnerability unsettles those who are used to controlling through affection, because they quickly realize that affection is not currency for someone who already belongs to himself. He is not cold, he is sovereign, and sovereignty is unsettling to those who live asking for permission to exist. The desexualized man starts seeing the world as a board, not as an emotional theater. Every person driven by their own desire becomes predictable, and predictability is weakness. He reads intentions through posture, detects games through silence, and notices manipulation before it becomes a trap. This anticipation gives him the most dangerous advantage. He is never caught off guard. In the end, the principle proves itself without exaggeration. The one who does not need becomes free. The one who is free becomes dangerous. Psychological untouchability is the point at which a man stops being merely disciplined and becomes feared, not because he threatens, but because he cannot be dominated by anyone. Every form of power demands a price, and desexualization is no exception. When a man breaks the emotional bond with desire, he also breaks a bridge with the world. Extreme freedom generates silence, and that silence can turn into isolation if it isn't governed. He notices that the connections which once attracted him now feel shallow, predictable, almost irrelevant. This distance can make him more selective than necessary, creating a territory where few can enter, and many stop trying. Coldness, when left unchecked, can slide into arrogance. A man who masters his own impulse may start believing he also masters the impulses of others, and this illusion pushes away allies, opportunities, and strategic relationships. The silence that used to be a weapon becomes a wall. Self-control turns into detachment. The absence of need can be mistaken for disdain, and when that happens, he loses something essential: the ability to navigate social dynamics without appearing untouchable. Strength becomes a mask. Power becomes a facade. Another risk is rigidity. A man who controls his desire can become inflexible, convinced that any concession is weakness. But mastery isn't about denying the instinct, it's about directing it. Desexualization isn't the death of impulse, it is its domestication. Suppressing desire is easy, almost cowardly. Governing it is harder. It requires awareness and precision. Coldness should exist as a tool, not as an emotional prison built to avoid vulnerability. The truth is simple: every extreme has a cost. The desexualized man must remember that strength without humanity turns into internal tyranny. And internal tyranny breeds silent neuroses that corrode the very mastery he fought to build. The goal was never to kill desire. It was to place it where it belongs, behind the mind, not ahead of it. In the end, the dark side reveals the true principle of power. The man who cannot control himself ends up trying to control everything around him. The man who masters desire must stay vigilant not to be dominated by the pride that mastery creates. Virtue lies in balance, not in extremes. The sovereign man is not the one who eliminates desire, but the one who integrates it without being dragged by it. He doesn't react to stimuli like ordinary men. He chooses his stimuli the way someone chooses a weapon. Nothing in him is automatic, impulsive, or needy. His mind operates through calculation, not urgency, and this inner architecture creates a form of power that never needs to be announced, only recognized. Every decision, every step, every silence carries the signature of someone who never negotiates with himself. Sovereignty is forged through the fusion of discipline and instinct. He doesn't repress his impulses. He directs them toward higher ends: strategy, ambition, construction. Pleasure stops being the goal and becomes a resource, used when necessary, discarded when inconvenient. A woman doesn't move him, an opportunity does. Temptation doesn't divert him, a target leads him. He refuses to be seduced by emotional games because he knows that those who play emotionally always lose to those who play rationally. This clarity places him above any silent contest for dominance. His presence is stable, his gaze doesn't seek approval, and his posture doesn't seek interpretation. He occupies space effortlessly, as someone who understands the value of his own attention. The world tests him, but he never responds immediately, and that calculated delay exposes his internal hierarchy. He doesn't fear loss because he doesn't depend on gain. He doesn't fear rejection because he doesn't depend on acceptance. His independence isn't aesthetic, it's structural. Machiavelli would call this man impossible to manipulate, not because he knows everything, but because nothing inside him can be used against him. He doesn't bow to stimuli, and he doesn't rush toward desire. His choices are not born from momentary emotion, but from a vision that reaches farther than most people can imagine. He doesn't seek to dominate. He dominates precisely because he doesn't need to seek. In the end, the sovereign archetype narrows down to a silent law. The man who governs himself does not fear governing the world. He becomes a reference not through force, but through inevitability. A desexualized mind is only the beginning. Sovereignty is the destiny. In the end, the entire journey returns to the same point: a man standing alone before his own reflection. Nothing that was said depends on the external world. Everything originates in the mind that learns to remove desire from the throne. When impulse stops commanding, clarity takes its place. And that clarity exposes something uncomfortable. For years, you believed you wanted pleasure, when in reality, you were seeking escape. Desexualization reveals this truth with surgical precision. It eliminates noise and restores control. The questions that arise are not motivational, they are diagnostic. What governs your mind? Desire or purpose? Do you act by choice or by reflex? Are you the owner of your attention, or merely a slave to the nearest stimulus? Each answer that surfaces within this internal silence is a map. If there is restlessness, it signals that dependency still exists. If there is calm, It shows the mind is beginning to reorganize itself around discipline rather than need. This mirror does not accuse, it reveals. Your entire life changes when desire stops being the master and becomes the servant. The man who dominates this internal axis becomes predictable only to himself and unpredictable to everyone else. He negotiates better, relates better, leads better, not because he became too cold, but because he stopped being flammable. Nothing external defines his value, and nothing external dictates his direction. Autonomy, once distant, becomes concrete. Presence, once unstable, becomes a foundation. The final instruction is simple and direct. Write in the comments, "I control my mind," not as a shout, but as a pact. Not as an emotional affirmation, but as a strategic declaration. It's a reminder that power does not begin in the world. It begins in the mind that refuses to be dragged by desire. And keep watching. The next video doesn't motivate. It completes the transformation. It elevates this principle to a higher level, where a man not only controls desire, but fully redefines what it means to have power over himself. The mirror is in front of you. The choice, this time, is yours.